Okay, hello everyone. This is Ben, and he is Ben Zegers, and he is the director of the school, if you were not aware of that. And he is going to talk about do-it-yourself. And last time when we met, we were talking about copying as a method of teaching. And today I would like Ben to open the conversation about do-it-yourself as another method. But I would also like him to talk about maybe what are the qualities of it, or you were also maybe going to talk about that it might be more an attitude than a method, but I'll just let you start and then we can take it from there.
Okay, all right. Welcome. Thanks for inviting me, Morgan and Nikolai.
Oh, I just want to say that it's going to be recorded, this conversation, just so you're aware of that. Good.
All right. Okay. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a long time ago since I was in a class with students. I started out as a teacher some while ago, in 2001, entering the basic year as a sculptor teacher. On a Monday morning, in an empty class with about 21 students, and there was nothing in the room except the students and me. And I was invited to give sculpture lessons. Now, that might sound like there might be a recipe for sculpture and art and design in general, but there isn't. Or one might say there are thousands of them, and that's why it's so nice to be here in the library, because it's full of examples by people who were interested and had their practice in art and design. And I think in general, the art and design education is to make sure that the position of art and design in general in society is being secured with new generations every year again, coming in, going out, and being able to speak the language, the visual language of art and design. It can have various forms, thousands of forms. Again, there's no recipe for it. So you have to find out yourself. The lessons in the basic year mostly start with assignments. Those are no assignments to be solved. Those are, as to say, tricks to get us going and to find out what possibilities and opportunities there are to find your own voice. And of course one can stay at home and learn it all by oneself, but it doesn't move on very quickly that way. And I think the most important thing of us here being at an art academy is to get inspired by each other. And that is why we always say, do it yourself, but not alone. So the do-it-yourself component is limited to a certain extent. Everybody has to do it his, herself, but we're all in the same situation, with the same interest, but with different focuses. And I think we learn that way from each other. But to give you an example for an assignment, one of the first lessons I always asked, bring a bread of clay. Now, it's a kind of a problem, certainly for Monday morning, because Monday morning the shop where you get your clay is closed. So you have to get it by Saturday. You have to get it home, bring it here. It's 10 kilos, so your bike is going to wobble under the weight. It's a simple start of practicing for practice, because that is what we do, I think, in the end. In a 4-year study, there's a development, starting with the initiation in the basic year, getting to acquainted with all fields of art and design, and then by practicing your view, you practice your ability to choose, and that is what happens in the end of the basic year. You choose for a department, and then you get acquainted with that field, and then you deepen your practice in the second vakjaar, and you define your position in the graduation year. And all those things you have to do yourself. It's not something that it's not an invention, it's a certain culture Rietveld has developed through the years. It is an organically grown approach to art education. Nobody can tell you what to make. You have to find out yourself. But again, not alone. And that is why we are here together. And together we continue to develop this approach. And in this way, I don't see that is what I have learned. I've learned a lot in the past years myself. There's no difference between the student and the teacher, except for the amount of expertise. So it supports students to deepen their interest and to deepen your output. That, in short, is what I have to say about do it yourself. So, that's opening up the conversation. And I don't know, has everybody done the basic year?
Yep.
Some didn't. You didn't?
Yep.
You did?
Yep.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. And now you have moved on. And who didn't?
No, who didn't? Oh,
4
I
of
did.
you. And do you have the feeling you miss it?
No.
You don't. Good for you. Looking back to the basic year, which is a fundamental experience of getting into this experience of yourself, getting into it completely. How do you look back to the basic year?
I don't know, I think if you just start from like having no knowledge whatsoever, and you're just getting thrown in this room, and you have this think you can start modeling or modeling. But I mean, then I think maybe it's good if you in the beginning, or why is it better that you're not having any like history with modeling and then you just start doing it because you don't even know how to approach the material. And what do you see is that, what is the advantage of that compared to if you start having another approach where you're going to start modeling, for instance, like a nude person standing in front of you, and you're getting like specific techniques how to do it. And I don't know these techniques because I didn't, you know. So I got thrown out in it. But what do you see as these, like, what are the advantages?
I think that when you know what to do, when you learn where your interest is, you get to know what you need to do. When you have an idea of what you want, you look for the adequate means to make it happen. So, let's say in my own art education, it was a little more classical than we have here. So you get a whole range of focused things like modeling in the sculpture department, which I wasn't there, by the way, or model drawing, which we do over here as well. But in a less classical way than, for instance, in Pilsen, where I was 3 weeks ago, everybody does nude drawing, model drawing, and it all has to be very accurate. Okay. We don't teach a way that it's supposed to be as we know it, but as a way to explore your own way of looking, developing in your own view. Along the way, learning by doing, you get to know what you need. You get to know what you need to obtain. So it's not and for everybody, that's a bit different. So it's not the same. Copying, like you said, is one method. Like when I was a child, I took books from the library, and then I drew the images, for instance. And I know somebody, and that's the one who edited this book, is Frans Oosterhoff. He is a former teacher of Rietveld. It's a nice book about today's artists, designers that have studied here, in which he thinks he can recognize the Rietveld approach. But he himself, Frans Oosterhoff, one day he found letters of his father, very nice written, but he couldn't read yet. So he drew them, he copied them by drawing, which is a very nice way of visual thinking, one might say. Yeah, what did I want to say? Oh yeah, it was about copying. It's only one way to start learning something. As a kid, learning to talk, for instance, you do it by copying what others say, etc. But there's, in education, a lot more to it. So, for instance, when I talk about sculpture as being a language on its own, like music is, for instance, one can obtain a way of understanding of the opportunities, limitations, and possibilities that it brings along. Of the means that you have in your hands, at your disposal. So there's form, and there's volume, and there's space, and there's the weight even, there's color, etc. All these visual means that need to find a certain balance, and this certain balance is telling us what is meant to be told with the work. So, and the language of form is something we all understand, but we are not always aware of. And for us, the task is to, let's say, master these possibilities and in a way manipulate them in a way that somebody else understands what you're telling with your image, sculpture, whatever it is. So, and I think that is a specialty that is nowhere to be found, not in another form of education. I think that is very important to be aware of, that we all together try to be good at something, and this something is not something somebody else can tell you, but you need to find out yourself. So you need to know what you want. And this is an occasion where you can find out what you want and develop it further and further until you're, let's say, able to manage all these means and, as to say, to steer your imagination. Because when you compare all the other ways of investing in your own future, all the other opportunities in ways of studying elsewhere, not art academies, but other forums, it all differs from art and design. It's a very specific thing in society. And this all has to do with imagination. So we are kind of specialists in steering, mastering our imagination. I think that, on the long run, is what art and design has to offer. It's not solving something, but it's a tool in defining our relation to the world. And here, togetherness comes in.
Yeah, at some point you mentioned the position, this position, and the position also of, like, I guess your position as being the head of the school and of Rietveld has also securing, in a way, the future of art and design. But what do we secure, actually? Like, what does doing things yourself overall secure for the art and design in the future, or even in our contemporary world? Like, why would this then secure more things for art and design rather than a more extreme way that would be like a totally applied school of design or applied school of art? Like, in what way are we actually really securing something, and what is that we're securing? If you
I think in general, on the long run, we are securing that new generations that are able to have this role in society is very important. I think art and design, that's why I'm here. It's my personal conviction. I've been studying myself as becoming an artist, and became an artist, and finding that for myself the most important thing in life. Convinced that it has a important position in society, in life, in the world. So from that angle, I came in as a teacher and went on to develop coordinating the basic year and so on and so on. In general, I think securing a good position for arts and design in society is essential.
But how do you do that?
Go to the bottom. Well, by talking to each other what that might be. And I think the variety in the voices, the different voices, is essential. That is why I say there's no recipe for art and design. If we start making everybody all the same, there's no use to it anymore. It's about different sounds, different positions, because life is not one-dimensional. It's multidimensional, so art is automatically ought to be the same. It ought to reflect this variety.
Yeah, I just really was super curious, like how do you, like all of you experience do-it-yourself? Is it like, what does those words actually mean for you? Like Boyan, what does do-it-yourself mean for you?
Yeah, I thought your question was interesting for me because I already had this bachelor in a kind of very applied academy, and I really didn't like it. I actually hated it. And for me, doing another bachelor here in the Rietveld was very, very important. And I have to say, I really love it. And for me, that's kind of like a very important, part of it, which is do it yourself. I'm in the fine arts department, so we don't get assignments. You're faced with nothingness, and you have to do something with it. You have to find something within yourself, to keep on going. Yeah, for me, it's a very important aspect.
What is that precisely the aspect? Because if I graduated in June to somewhere, and it was also the do-it-yourself, funny enough, I didn't know that was also at the Rietveld. But for me, the do-it-yourself was really like just, fall as hard as you can all the time.
Yeah.
And then eventually you know which way you want to go. But that's my experience. I was super curious how it is like here, actually.
Yeah, do it yourself. You cannot blame the others.
No.
You can blame yourself.
Yeah, responsibility.
Exactly, responsibility and freedom. And freedom is responsibility, actually. Yeah. So I don't know, anybody else?
But let's say once you found, after trials and failure, you'll find what your interests are, and now you want some, let's say, tools to demonstrate what your discourse is. That's where, for me, sometimes I feel like this notion of do-it-yourself is a bit more complicated, because even though we do have technicians and people to help us if we need proper help, it's sometimes still a bit blurred, because then you find yourself trying a lot still, which is necessary, but it's also never really, I feel like sometimes you never feel like you're going somewhere. And I know art and design are about going somewhere, but at the same time you want at some point to be, I don't know, proud of what you're doing, or say there's a dot at the end of your sentence or whatever it is. And I feel like it's something which is way harder to grasp on when you find yourself in education where everything is so, let's say, yeah, flying. I mean, it's here, you have possibilities, but it's way, I feel it's, because I also did...
Interesting, you say complicated, so do you mean it in a negative? Do you think complicated is a negative thing?
No.
Also graspability, you know, isn't life also hard to grasp?
Yeah, but I also did 1 year of applied design before I came here, and I really also hated it. But I felt like what I've learned from a way more, you know, let's say, structured background has helped me a lot being more free here. So I feel like it's never, you know, one way or the other, but it's always nice to have like a balance. I'm not saying the way I see my education now is perfectly balanced, but I do really believe that hating it in the past and learning from it really helps me now. And I know that it would have been totally different if I arrived here completely newborn, out of high school or out of I don't know where. And I think complicated is a really nice adjective actually, because it makes things even more like hard, but at the same time the outcome of what you find at the end of it is more fruitful at the same time, I would say. But still, I think it's we also brought this topic because I think we do feel like it's quite a complicated one actually, because last time when we had Adeola speaking, we could tell some people were not agreeing at all, or some people, like me for example, I was deeply convinced of what she was saying when she was actually talking about the way she sees education and what education she receives. So I think it's it's something that is quite going on also when people actually make complaints, you know, about how things are or how they would love things to be. And of course it's not about pretending to make the school perfect, but it's about, I guess, I mean, this also discussion is about wondering, could it be also different, like depending on, I know a school cannot be really like told successful, you know, but let's say you were mentioning at some point that the school has been like this for several years, and I was wondering if at some point people might, you know, just sit and say, okay, we think it's not working that way anymore. Could we do something about it? Or did that ever happen? Or it has been just...
Well, it's adapting all along the years. So things slowly change when things don't work anymore, or there are good suggestions. It's being added to the education. The education develops, or the approach of education develops like, as to say, an artist designer develops. It's an organic way. It's not a model that's put on the academy, but it's a slowly developed culture from the experience of the absence of one recipe. So, and I think this word responsibility. Well, I brought this book. It's been made 10 years ago, and there are quotes from the talks that we have on the academy, and then she was saying, "I want to go to Rietveld because it's so free."
Wait.
Okay, and there are a lot of.
Is it a good reason, you think? You think it's a good reason?
Oh, I think freedom is one of the most important things in life. Everybody yearns for freedom. There's a desperate urge for freedom. And when you ask, no, let's put it this way. Someone said, well, education is about emancipation. When you look in the dictionary and see what emancipation is, it says making free. But you can have different views on freedom, of course. But when people say, I go to Rietveld for freedom, it's in the beginning of this learning process. And then freedom is interpreted as the absence of limitations. While during the studies and during the phase in life that students are in generally, one learns to work with the limitations that are there, and then turn the limitations into a free way of dealing with them. So then in the end, it's not about the absence of limitations, but being able to use the limitations in a way that is offering you opportunities. And that's another way of thinking about freedom.
But why is there then not more limitations in the school? If you have even more limitations from what you just said, and you get to deal with them, then you might be even better at it if you were faced with more limitations and more restrictions, because then you would maybe be more able to really make use of these, because some would argue that there are no limitations in the school. I guess there are whatsoever, but they are not always very visible, and therefore people are also not maybe very caring about what is going on, and they really have this do-it-yourself, but in a very individual way, and there is not really anything to maybe rebel against. I don't say you have to do that, but to also maybe turn these limitations, because you don't really learn how to do it because there are no visible ones.
Well, for instance, when teaching sculpture and deciding that we are going to work in clay, for instance, the material does offer quite a lot of limitations that demand from us a way to work with that is impossible in other materials, for instance. It has huge limitations, and those are the limitations I'm talking about. Like, for instance, we should talk about clay modeling. I always did an assignment in the basic year, or I did that a few years, and say, okay, certainly in the beginning, okay, how do we get to know each other? Okay, you all bring a brand of clay, and then for half a day, we're going to make small portraits of each other. So we get to know each other, because we have to look each other in the face, and not only in the face, but also in the back, etc. You take a handful of clay, and you do a portrait in a few minutes, and again, and again, and again. And then, at 30, there are 100 of small portraits that have challenged you to deal with the limitations of clay and your way of looking at each other. And you get to know each other from the looks, etc., etc. So it serves multiple purposes. And in between, you don't have time to think. You only have the opportunity to see and to train your eyes and your hands. And all of a sudden, after a few hours, there's this enormous source of material. And it worked in a very well way. And it's very limited.
But I think, at least when I was in the basic year, it happened a few times, what you're just describing here. But most of the time, we were really, the subjects also sort of melded together, and we could do whatever we liked to do. So it was very, without limits, which, gave me a lot of time to think but I didn't know where to put these thoughts because I didn't have any readings or whatsoever. Because, yeah, I could go to the library, but I was just very new to all these things, and
Yeah.
I didn't have maybe a fundament as you have from the other school. And I think, or I mean, I don't know if I think that, but that this fundament that's sort of missing here is also sometimes maybe limiting people as well than in the in a verse.
That's a very good remark, I think. So what you say is freedom is a limitation itself this way.
I think you will have to that you will have to dive into different things and copy different, for instance, or follow different people, for instance teachers, because they might be more qualified than other students, because they have more years behind and they
experience.
Exactly. And if you don't really get to follow lots of different teachers, I mean you do in the basic year, but they don't tell you anything. They just give you an assignment mostly.
Yeah.
So
everybody has the same assignment.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the only one with that assignment, so you talk to each other about
but we
this
all
assignment.
sort of
and what do
knew
you
as
do
well.
with it?
That's the
Yeah.
thing. So
But
of course
there's
you
one
can
moment
learn.
that all together you discuss the outcomes of an assignment or the way to approach an assignment, and that is the way that you learn to deal with this blur, freedom, and confusion even, and doubt, because that is what I think is extremely important, that in a school doubt is being avoided. Everything is aimed for security, but we're not here for security, because we all know we are here to start from an insecure position. We're not looking for security, we are looking for opportunities. And opportunities in ways of working that we haven't seen yet. I think that is essential. And so in this, we embrace doubt, which we, I speak in general, avoid in other educations or forms of education.
I would just love to come back to the notion of freedom that you're bringing, and just the notion of freedom. Do you, I don't know if it's fundamentally or intimately thinking that freedom exists without structures, like thinking that you can have access to freedom in this place where there's little or even maybe no limitation? Do you think is it really freedom, or do you think that, okay, I would say the way I see it, I also think that freedoms come out of once you understand rules and structures, that's where you can get your freedom from. I don't think freedom exists on its own out of nothing, and that's why I was a bit. It's interesting, I think, this quote, because it's so big. I want to go to Rietveld because it's so free, but yeah, for me it's like the best and the worst reasons to go to this school.
Yeah, but it turns out that following the education, that you also develop another understanding of freedom. Again, not of the absence of limitations, but finding the freedom in yourself to deal with limitations, even when the freedom itself is a limitation. This blur that you were talking about is essential. So there's no, you have to develop your own, let's say, clarity. And there's no you have to form your, let's say, answer to this freedom. You cannot find it out for somebody else. You can only do it for yourself. And in this, you help each other. We are here to support each other in this, to find this freedom and way to deal with it.
How do you feel like the school or the teacher or the structure of the school helps doing so? Like, because let's say this school could be an entire residency of international artists, but it's a school and it has a certain view on education. So
it's not a residency, no. There are other places that are residencies like the Rietveld Academy or the Ateliers or the Jan van Eyck.
But to what extent this school then is different? I know it's different, but I'm more asking what then the teachers and yourself and the mentality of the school have to add to this actually very sometimes lonely and not too lonely, but like let's say individual research.
I think lonely is a very good word in this. And that is why I say do it yourself, but not alone. There are very many other lonely people with you.
But I think you're raising an interesting point because everything that you tell and the title for this gathering is about doing it yourself. And also everything that you talk about is about individual practice, right? But what would be the role of collaboration?
I think.
And the future of arts education, actually, because the idea of individual practice is, of course, a very Western idea that maybe, I don't know, when did it originate? Not too long ago, and very much here in Europe. But what would be the future of that kind of education?
I have no idea. That's what we're trying to find out. And that is why it evolves along the way. So there's not one moment, we cannot not point out one moment that it turned into something else all of a sudden. It's like, but still we can say, well, it's different than 50 years ago. So it develops in doing. And I think the fact that we are here together already shows the interest of sharing. And maybe that's a good current development.
But I don't know.
Because, well, when you talk about this individuality, we stay individuals, but it doesn't mean each and every one of us is the only individual, though every individual knows loneliness. But developing arts and design together, I think, is very good. Developments occurring nowadays.
But it's a slightly different question, right? Whether or not we are all individuals, I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
We will always be individuals,
Yeah,
right?
which is important
But
to...
art education for individual practice versus art education for collaborative practice, that's the question. That's what what I am interested in, actually.
I think what happens from the basic year, students get to know each other. All students go to different departments, but keep knowing each other and making friends and unify in certain different groups, which I think is good. Thinking about the development of art and design perhaps in a different way. And then the question is, what might be the consequences for the academy as a whole? That's an interesting question. But I think as long as there is space and time to follow these needs, and I think we continue to grow and develop from the needs that we have. And that is why there's no stamp on the education that is completely fixed, but there's an openness that gives us the opportunity to move on.
When you were actually selected or applied, I don't know, to be the head of the school, did you came up with certain ideas or new ways of seeing the Rietveld? Did you actually had or just came up with a new proposal for changing things, or was this just making the full role?
I think the most important thing was the appreciation for the culture that is at Rietveld. I come from Rotterdam. I live in Rotterdam. I still do. But I have taught in Rotterdam a long time ago, but I'm very much hooked, one might say, to the approach at Rietveld, being much more open to the needs that are being felt. And I think it is an approach to education that is closest to what the art practice is asking of us.
I think we move a bit too fast. I want to come back to the notion.
The collaboration.
Yeah, the collaboration thing. I haven't been to Rietveld for 2 days, and I think I missed something very important. We don't collaborate here anymore. I mean, I thought that the focus on collaboration was huge. I'm actually quite about that. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Sometimes actually I think, oh, maybe it would be better to have one more individual project. And the second thing I wanted to say that isn't it the better way to collaborate when you discover something interesting in yourself? Because then you can contribute something to the group. But if you are the same, maybe there is no point in collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to say.
I was going to say actually that I feel like the DIY atmosphere of the school stops people from collaborating and sharing ideas so much, because compared to maybe other schools, I feel like there's less studio culture, especially in VAV. And also walking around the fine art studios, I feel like people don't hang around so much and talk and discuss their ideas in the studios, and because they're off doing other things because of their assignments maybe so vague or like unprescriptive.
Well, in fine arts there aren't any assignments at all.
Yeah,
so it also shows that there are slightly different cultures between the various departments.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know what your department.
My department is graphic design.
Graphic design.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of difference in departments, definitely.
Yeah, I think graphic design is one of the
people, graphic design studios in Amsterdam don't think so, and around the world. They usually quite laugh at the students from Rietveld because in graphic design, because we practice we do is much more closer to fine arts. And actually, I think right now, if we talk about the teachers, there are more artists in the Rietveld Academy from graphic design from any other department. So I'm not sure if that's the relevant point.
To say what?
To say that the graphic design is completely different.
Oh no, I don't think it's completely different. I just think that regarding how it goes in fine art or VAV, I think like graphic design is way more closer to what I would see as a proper department, I would say. But I was saying it's particular because it's one of the only one to be the way it is. I don't know so much about the other one, but I don't know. I just feel like you get a lot of assignment, you get a lot of collaboration, you get a lot of workshop, you get a lot of things that might not happen in the other department, and that's why I'm saying it's a different one. But it's not like a meliorative or pejorative thing. I think it's, as you said, might grow way more things out of it rather than when it's way more.
But it doesn't need to be all the same. So, like Rietveld in general, every department has developed their own culture and their own. Every department has a different size, so it's all about what is appealing to you, not in what it is supposed to be. It's what you feel good with, and so it all depends on what you want to, what you would choosing is. Connected to your own needs, not what you're supposed to do, because you're self-directing. That is one way of explaining do-it-yourself. You direct yourself, nobody else can, and you need to learn that. I think one of the hard things in life is choosing. Shall I do this? Shall I do that? Don't feel good there. Let's do it. So it is choosing. You don't choose for yes or no. Like for instance, this is kind of my doubt model. This is yes and this is no. If I turn it like that, it's the other way around. But it doesn't matter what is. You need to find your way of dealing with things, and for everybody that's slightly different or completely different. Sorry. And that's quite important, and that is not just one teacher. There are many teachers with many views that you can listen to and talk to, because it's not about solutions for anything. For solutions, you go to a school and there's a question, and you say, well, the right answer is B. A, B, C, what's B? And then it's right or it's wrong. Here, it's not like that. It's about, there's no fixed answers. It's in exchanging and sharing views, you find your way of dealing with things, with material, with knowledge, with all these aspects that in a certain, that is never one-dimensional, but has a great complexity. In this balancing complexity, there's your attitude, your voice. And that is what we try to acquire. So I always say we're not a school, we're an academy, and an academy is funded on exchange. And it never stops. and the possibilities and opportunities are endless. And that is a problem.
I don't know how good we are at exchanging though. At least I had the feeling last
Good at-
year.
Sorry? You don't know
How good we are at, like, you know, exchanging different views.
Yeah.
Because last year when I was in the basic year and also this year, when we are having presentations, I often have the feeling that people are not really listening to the others, but more focusing on his or her work. Mm-hmm. And I think it's this individual approach to it too, that, you know, it also requires, if you actually have to use your classmates as sort of colleagues and help, like, you should help each other out, it requires quite a responsibility to be, you know, not only focusing on yourself, but also the others. And I think, of course, maybe the teacher tried that last year, but I think it was very often when we had group presentations that there were no interest whatsoever in the others' work. Of course, there was a few students always like responding, but most of them were maybe not even listening. And I often heard that, yeah, people also actually went out because all what matters were their own work. And I don't know if that's the school's responsibility, because I guess it's our responsibility, but is it then the school's responsibility to tell that we got this responsibility? You know, how can we get a better sense of what it actually requires for us to be in a school like this? Because it does require a lot of responsibility. And I don't know how to make us aware of that, or how I can be aware of that.
I think it's true. You can also,
Well, it seems you are.
I could be more
but you
aware,
can
I
also
guess.
get out of school with very little if you don't put yourself too much in it.
Come again?
You can also get out, have your diploma and graduate from the school with quite little if you didn't put yourself so much into it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not so complicated. I come back to this word. Finding yourself interest and finding ways to do it is complicated, but I don't think that being in a school is more complicated than being in applied design school per se. You know, it requires different things, but I think also it can be really easy here.
But then you're not going to be a great artist or designer. You get that? Like it's...
Yeah, I don't know if it's about meritocracy or
About what?
I'm missing the point.
Like it's not as much as you work. That's
Which year of fine arts? Sorry.
no BAV
Okay. Which year are you in?
first.
Because I'm in my final year of fine arts, and it's been quite a journey. It's in my experience, it's always been a lot of pressure that I've felt to perform and to do my very best, because in my experience, many people repeat the year. And repeat the year. So many people repeated the first year of fine arts, some people repeated the second year of fine arts, or decided to repeat it themselves. So just in my experience, it's been a very hard journey, you know. So I don't know how I could have gotten, or I could go out of this journey without taking a lot from it, you know. And just looking at everyone around me, I feel like we've grown a lot. So I'm really on the positive side of what you're saying, you know. So it's interesting for me to hear it.
Yeah, I guess maybe comes
It's hard
with the
for me to
graduation
relate
year,
with it.
yes.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a big difference. If you're going out the same way as you came in, something's wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So there is a certain development.
Yeah.
And this development comes along with a struggle. And if there's no struggle, there's nothing to gain. Right? So there must be something to gain for everybody altogether, but it's not for everybody exactly the same thing that you need to gain. But you're at the same, let's say, phase in your life in dealing with art and design and getting better at the things you are interested in. not what others are interested in, and what you are interested in. So you are the one that knows, okay, you have to find your way. You cannot find somebody else's way. You have to find your way. There's no other thing.
Yes, but
And
also,
you help each other out. And teachers are supporting students, and students are supporting each other.
I think it can be also a very kind of dangerous situation to be in that freedom and trying to find your own way, because you can end up at the end doing always the same thing and turn around, because you find your subject, you find your own way, you do what you like, but then if nobody's there to tell you that you can go farther, or if you have that deep emptiness in front of you, you don't know what to do, and it's very dangerous.
I think it's to do like if you're quite lazy person, then you could, but you're you know, the teachers are always there, but I think you have to be really self-motivated to go and access the resources. But if
I don't mean being lazy, I mean being obsessed with the same thing. If it's your thing, you can find it, the subject, a certain topic, infinite. And you're not going to be lazy, but you're going to stay at the same point in some way.
And it might be fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
There are also in this library examples of people who do the same thing their whole life. But still, in the end, it's different from the start. But as long as you're fine with that, who might say that it's not forbidden. But yeah, I guess that's the point. Being fine with doing the same thing all along your life. But I don't think it is something.
it's also
Within that you can develop.
yeah, it's like it sounds to me like the ultimate battle between quality and quantity. You know, which one? And yeah, I can also only give examples, you know, right now from people from my class. But you know, there's people who do the same thing as you know, as you say, and then there are people who always do something else. And for me personally, I like doing different things. I like exploring. You know, for me, the medium is not so important. The exploration of, let's say, art, that's what interests me. But also there are people who do, you know, just one thing, but it always develops. Yeah, to echo what Ben said. Yeah.
Sorry, can I say something? I think I might understand what you're saying though about kind of when you're searching for your topics or your subjects, and you, in a way where you do have this kind of freedom and you can do it in your own kind of way, but then you're faced with this kind of infinite like emptiness or nothing, which is not that it's empty, but it's just that there's so much, or it's like this huge void of something like looming over you.
There is so much that there isn't anything anymore.
Yeah, and it's like you're
There's an
spinning out
overload,
kind
you
of-
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
there's
that's
so
a big
many
problem. Of
possibilities
course
that
it
you
is.
feel stuck, you feel trapped.
Yeah. We're all trapped.
Yeah,
We are.
we're trapped here. Yeah, for me it's really helpful also like
And
to,
we try to find a way out.
yeah, to compare, like, you know, what kind of an artist you want to be. It's like saying what kind of person you want to be, you know? And
Yeah, it's about you.
But you cannot just pick it. You cannot just say, okay, well, it's much too complicated to put it in one dimension. So it's about balancing yourself in this overload of information, or and other times, well, you might say emptiness or loneliness, or yeah, it's all these experiences like feeling lost, etc. It's all, these are essential experiences to move on and to break through or develop through or beyond. Or it is a struggle.
I do see the
Otherwise,
sure.
there are other things to do in life that are very well defined before, but in art and design, the essence is that it is not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's being defined in a million ways.
Yeah, I definitely see the value in those experiences as well. But I think I'd be curious also to hear more about what you think about how to introduce different ways or methods of guiding in a kind of educational system that could help people find their way out of these kinds of places. Not necessarily like telling people what to do, but different ways, because you go to school to figure these things out, and obviously it's in your own time, in your own way, but still it's like you want to be able to have some kind of guidance in some kind of way.
Yeah. And are you missing this guidance?
I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to know when you need it and when you don't. Because sometimes you can find your way, and it's definitely not easy, but it's better that it was in your own time and that you went through that struggle. But it's also good to sometimes get help, I guess, or work through it with other people. Or
But don't you?
yeah, I know. And I'm just like curious about, because it's so blurry and it is kind of this approach of like, this is the reason for the approach, is because like finding the freedom inside yourself and figuring out.
I don't mean that in a vague way.
Yeah,
I mean
I
that in
know.
a very clear a problem.
Yeah, but then you
And
are
it's asking ourselves to articulate what we are busy with,
yeah,
which is a very hard thing.
right. But
when-
you do have teachers, so it's like, what is their role? And like, there is some kind of system still. So like, how do you moderate those things, or how do you negotiate them? I'm just
Who do you mean by you?
I guess, I don't know, people who are
Everybody around here.
performing the same, yeah, anybody.
Well, again, I think it's very important there are different voices, different teachers as well, using different methods, having different things to say, having different suggestions. But in the end, again, it's you who decides, or not even decides, but feels comfortable with the one approach or the other approach. And you don't need, you don't know in advance. You need to find your way through it by learning and trying and experimenting, and then finding out what suits you, what answers your needs. So there's not one answer, there are many answers, and that is why we are with many of us having the same interests. But I think, and that is something I forgot to answer to you when it's about sharing. We also need to listen, but of course, when people are together, not everybody is the same, and there's this tension between, individuality, collective, etc. It will always be there, but I think and I hope and expect candidates, students to be curious. Curious regarding the matter we're dealing with, but certainly as well to the people who we are with. And in that case, it's a small community, but it's also a kind of practicing for a large community after the academy with the same problems and even more, and yeah, it will only get more complicated. But in moving on, you learn to deal with different levels of complexity, I guess. And the funny thing is that the more you know, the less time there is to put it all in practice. It's the thing of time running out.
Yeah, I have like a little bit like more practical question. That I noticed there is like a big problem with housing in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And I noticed that a lot of my classmates and fellow students, they're in this really precarious position where they don't know where they can live, or they can find a housing but without a registration, and also they have to work next to their studies to maintain themselves. And if there is a plan for the school to solve like the situation with the housing, because I find it really difficult when you have all this freedom and at the same time you don't have the stability in life to deal with this freedom. You know what I mean?
I know very well what you mean, because I have the same problem. Only the academy has had this academy assembly lately, and there this housing problem is mentioned as a big thing for everybody, for the community. It's not something the academy can solve, but can put attention to. It's only not the subject of this meeting today, but it is very clear that all the things you mention are not productive. So it's very hard, and to have your money earned and without a place to go and having to study, etc. Yeah, it's a stressful situation.
But then you can also argue that, I mean, that's also a part of life, and after we stop studying, we also have to find a place to stay.
Yeah.
And we also have to do it ourselves, like at work, in like our private life, and also to find a house. I mean, there are like all these things we have to do ourselves.
Yeah,
so
sure.
now,
But it's very good in this, because I can solve it. So it's a question beyond this topic, but it connects in a way. So we can try to support each other in a difficult situation.
There is this housing like duo where only first year students can live there for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So there is no possibility to have the place for the 4 years of the studies. So maybe there is, like, I don't know, maybe there is a plan. I don't think so.
There is no plan.
No.
There is information. No, there's information on suppose you're a candidate and you want to study at Rietveld, and then you get a mail, okay, it's hard to find a place in Amsterdam. And these are addresses that can help you finding a place. But the amount of opportunities is narrowing down and down and down and down in today's society, certainly in Amsterdam, where the situation is getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
So the Academy has to try and make a bigger effort in supporting this, mentioning this problem and helping in solving this problem. But we cannot solve it as an academy for all our students,
Yeah,
because we don't have houses as an academy. We only have this place.
But I think even if you were able to solve it, I don't know if it's your responsibility.
That's
Actually.
a question, but you know,
Because if you
it is
stay-
important to be aware of this problem and to think, okay, what can we do?
Yeah, especially if you're one of the most international academies in Europe, as I understand. In the sense that I guess there is, schools somewhere when mainly people speaking the same language go, and it's much easier. But if you come from faraway place to Amsterdam and you are new here, it's much harder to find a place than if you are.
Yeah,
from
it
Europe,
needs
for
more
example.
preparation and getting known to
Yeah.
the situation, etc. Yeah, I guess so too. But it doesn't mean there's it doesn't change the amount of houses and places
Yeah.
Amsterdam has to offer. But it is a problem, yeah, getting.
Another question that I have, do you monitor the students after the graduation, what they're working, what they're doing, with what they're busy with? Do you have connections with them?
Yeah, we do.
How many students after the graduation stick to the career of the artist? Let's say, or work in the field.
I don't know by heart, but today's art and design practice is a multi-focused practice. There's hardly any people being in a studio on their own, day in, day out. So there are a range of activities possible, but again, you have to find your spot in this yourself. But it might be very well another kind of activity that is not, let's say, directly recognized as an artistic one, but does acquire a certain creativity that you have learned to use here, so that you operate in other fields in other ways. And I think it has a lot to do with the ability to make choices.
And I think that will be the closing line.
Let's stick to that.
Thank you for coming, and yeah, have a good evening.
We have a next discussion next week, though.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We have a next discussion next week, and we're inviting 2 ex-students from the Dutch Art Institute who did the master thing, which is actually the Dutch Art Institute, and we're going to talk mainly about how they're how do they include theory inside of the master, and how they actually deal with the input of theory in the art practice, and how does it work, and what kind of works and mindsets and dialogues it can create.
Good.
So,
So you are organizing these talks every week?
No.
Okay, because
try to do it
I thought
twice
you were
a month.
saying next week.
Yeah, but it's just...
Oh,
it
this is a
happens to
coincidence.
be-
Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. So, if you have other types of questions, another time. It's been long ago, I must say again, to be in class like this. So, I enjoyed it a lot.
thank you.
Thank you.